Hello there. Very good evening and welcome to Let's Talk Politics. I'm your host, Edward Layne, and of course, as usual, my Saturday partner, if you want, in this program is no other than the Member of Parliament for the People's Progressive Party Civic, the Honorable Sanjeev Datadin. Sanjeev, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Ed. Good evening to your viewers and your listeners. It's always a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me again.
All right, so as I always say, this program is really dedicated to bring to you, the people of this country, the progress, the development taking place under the People's Progressive Party civic government, but more so, it gives us an opportunity to respond to the many lies and misinformation that are being spread by the opposition, which seems to be their only agenda. They don't have much to do at this point in time. So, again, like every other program, we're going to use the opportunity to discuss what has been happening. As I indicated, I think on Thursday evening, we are creeping up on our first anniversary in office. And Sanjeev, what I want to say is when you look at what is happening in our country, you just take a look across the country, you will recognize that what has been done since the People's Progressive Party Civic took office on August 2 of last year, the tremendous development, the changes, the hope, in, being restored to people, would have outdone in just 11 months in our 12th month what the APNU AFC did in 5 years. Matter of fact, it's a stark contrast because they destroyed lives, they destroyed this country. People were hopeless, people lost their jobs, people were suffering, businesses were closing. And in the opposite, since we took office, we've seen complete opposite to what I'm talking about there.
Indeed, Ed. When the PPP came in to power on August 2nd, we met a country that had many deficiencies, the economic downturn that was on, business was not what it should be. As Guyanese would say, money wasn't circulating. That was a reality. Everybody knows that, and that's, nobody would reasonably dispute that. What is going on now, 11 months later, despite having a worldwide pandemic and despite having horrific floods, which are ongoing in all of the interior regions and nearly every region in Guyana, we still have positivity and hope. And that is born out of the economic activities and the opportunities that people are able to access. Scholarships are, we know there was a scholarship drive of 20,000. There was a concerted effort to educate our people so that they're better equipped for what lies ahead. All the economic activity, of course, Ed, would mean that you need more people with better skills, better qualified, better equipped to be employed in those skills. We know the petroleum sector is the main one, but there's also the hospitality sector. There are hotels that are going up. There are 2 that have already started. There are various operations along the wharf, building of wharves, shipping, transportation. All of these things are taking place now. And of course, different skill sets are going to be required. And the first thing is, of course, the great education drive that took place to get scholarships, to get people educated, to get them better access to education. That has happened. We've had roads being built. We have the bypass. Well, that's from Mandela that comes all the way down on the East Bank. And then the further road that goes all the way to Diamond. There is intention for it to go further, but these are the first 2 stages. It is well on the way. We've all seen the videos on Facebook that have shown just how much work is being done, how the roads are being done. There is the completion of the work on the Mandela and the Sheriff Street, which when we came in was in a state of absolute confusion. It has been put back on even keel. It's moving forward. The airport development, which was totally botched and for which inexplicable things occurred, we have that back on stream, and that should be done by the end of the year. So there is movement. We have difficulties. The pandemic and the flooding has not made it easier, but there is a vibe, there is a mood of positivity still within the country because things are moving. People are able to educate themselves, people are able to get jobs, there are jobs available. So it is moving in the right direction. Without a doubt, we're going to see greater economic activity because Minister Colin Crowell and Susan Rodriguez, both ministers, have been really driving at a clip with the housing, ensuring people can get access their house lots. There are industrial areas I know that are along the East Bank that are being done. There are house lots being given out in Essequibo, in Region 10, in Region 4, in Region 5, in Region 6. All of that means that there's going to be a lot more economic activity because to build homes, you need everything. You need sand, you need stone, you need cement, you need wood, you need windows, doors, everything. It's across the board, everything that will be required. And they have distributed so many house lots in the last 11 months that it eclipses what was done in 5 years by the previous administration. So the uptick is ongoing. We know that there's oil revenue that is being we are now benefiting from. We're putting in place the proper mechanism for the spending and the accessing and accountability that will go with it. So across the board, there are several fronts. The construction means the economy will be moving. The roads, the same thing. The education means we're going to be better equipped. And there are plans for other major economic projects that we're seeing. We saw that there will be a cement factory, I believe it is, in Essequibo, which doesn't have that level of economic activity. It's going to start happening there. There are plans about the roads in the interior. These are all going on. Their bridge, there are arrangements going on and submissions of tenders, and we have, I believe, received a number of tenders for the Demerara Bridge, which will only make communication between Region 3 and 4 better. So when you look at an overall perspective, it's like if they are the hands of an octopus, it's like 8 different things all moving forward, all moving upward. And I can only say to Guyanese, I encourage them to please work on whatever it is that you want to do and pay keen attention to your education, and your opportunities will follow.
Sanjeev, and you touched on a couple of things, and you made mention of, for example, the distribution of house lots. And, I was looking at a simple analysis of the distribution of house lots. And only earlier this week, we had the Minister of Housing, Colin Crowell, and Minister within the ministry, Susan Rodriguez, in Linden, Region 10, where they distributed 400 house lots in one day. An exercise that happened within 11 months of the People's Progressive Party civic government in office, has outdone 5 years of APNU AFC in office for Region 10, one of their strongholds, where they distributed only 360 house lots in 5 years.
And the criticism, I recall the criticism that was visited upon from the political, from the opposition, the criticism that they were making of Ministers Crowell and Rodriguez. And they had to defend themselves to say, look, we're actually here distributing house lots, which you should have done. And there was all the backlog created. They had to identify areas, they had to put in infrastructure works and all of these things. And can you imagine that? Now, I mean, the people of Guyana are by and large not concerned with who is handing them or giving them a benefit. The people of Guyana want to receive what they should get. They are entitled to it. It is their country, our country, and it is our land. So why should that be a difficult decision for any government to make? But you got to be proactive, you got to plan, you got to execute, and most importantly, this is not a talk business. This is a do the work business. And that is the difference. Promises were made. You and I both know that there is a clear and absolute indication within the PPPC that the promises that were made must be fulfilled. And all of those promises that are made, you and I know that that is a driving force of His Excellency and the Vice President. All of the things that were being done when we were leading up to the elections and opposition, you know that there is a driving force from His Excellency and the Vice President that these promises, we have got to fulfill these promises. And it's happening daily. The reversal of VAT was an important promise that was kept. All of those VAT increases that were reversed. So I think we're headed in the right direction. There are several fronts that are moving simultaneously. It is regrettable that the political opposition chooses to criticize every effort that is made of development. And I mean, even if we take a look at this past week, Minister Manik Chan and several other ministers are across the country distributing a cash grant to students. It's difficult with COVID. Parents are a little bit more challenged to be able to provide so that the children can go to school. With the flooding, it has not made it any easier. And there's criticism that you should not participate and you should not take the cash grants and the teachers shouldn't be involved in it. I mean, how could people realistically say that? Not to mention that there was a lot of talk in the previous government about rewarding parents for educating their children by the sanctimonious gangster and all of that. That whole attitude was that, but again, it was talk. Was it ever done? Were any steps taken to actually give effect and to materialize and to let the rhetoric of the promise reach the hands of the people and the lives of the people? Nothing like that happened. We have to, I know that there's several views, and the Vice President touched on it, and there's several views that arose about when you're giving grants to the nation and when you're giving grants to the people, whether it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. The reality, Ed, is we're in a pandemic. The reality is they're flooding that are severely affecting people's lives and their ability to work. It is not that they don't want to work. It is a little help, a little helping hand to keep them going, to keep the process so that they can participate in what is going on in the economic upturn in Guyana. We have to do this until such time as the floods have receded. There's nothing we can do about that. We have to wait until this pandemic, which, we thought it would have been a few months at first, and there was the lockdown, but we're here a year and a half nearly later, and it's still in the process. But what are you going to do? People have to stay home. They have to be safe. They have to try to keep themselves safe and their families safe. I hope they're getting vaccinated. You and I always talk about it. It's a very important part. We're seeing reports out of the UK and the US that are saying that we now have a pandemic of the unvaccinated, because of course the effect on the vaccinated is much less. And the pandemic is really, so it's a division of the society based on who got vaccinated and not, and who did not. And given that we have enough vaccines in Guyana for the adult population, I plead with people, forget politics, forget all the Facebook professors, follow sound advice. Vaccines work, get vaccinated. The Delta variant and all of the things that we're hearing about how easily spread and all of that, that has to be a real concern for the persons who are not vaccinated, and they should take great care to make sure that they are vaccinated.
Sanjeev, I want to take you back a little bit because you raised some very critical issues. And I want us to spend a little bit of time to deal with some of the unfounded, the unnecessary criticism of the Because We Care cash grant program. But before I get back to that, I wanted to make the point that, when you hear the criticism from the opposition, sometimes it's laughable, and sometimes it's so barefaced on their part. Could you imagine not giving house lots to very many people in Region 10 in 5 years? And you have the audacity to stand up and criticize a government or ministers who go into that community and in one day distribute 400 house lots, and you took 5 years to distribute less than that. It is laughable again, and it's sad when you have leaders in the opposition who are criticizing a cash grant program, a program that they stopped, a program that Granger claimed he wanted to do in January of 2020, which clearly was an election gimmick, was an attempt to fool people, to hoodwink people into believing that the opposition then government was willing to put in place a cash grant program for school children. And so it's because there probably wasn't nothing in it for them. They couldn't steal from that. So what? They discontinued that program. And I think on Thursday, we observed the anniversary, 6 years to the day, when Granger actually announced that he was putting on hold the cash grant program because it was not economically feasible. But at the same time when he said that, you had a story, you had an issue in 2015, for example, and it came up just the other day at the Public Accounts Committee, which you remember, of the $19 million spent on surveillance cameras that have not yet been delivered by that US company, and the company is now bankrupt. Those are the trademarks. That's the legacy of the PNC in office. But they come now to criticize a government that is putting systems in place, that is creating opportunities, that is getting benefits to the people using state resources, not to give $19 million to somebody who has a bottom house company that eventually closed, now is bankrupt, and you have not delivered. Not to give $600 million in drug contract to somebody on an emergency basis, and it took years to deliver it. Not to rent a drug bond, to rent a house rather, to put condoms and an old piece of machine for $12.5 million a month because the person financed your elections campaign. This is a government, the People's Progressive Party Civic is a government that is focused on bringing benefits to the people, on using the resources of the state to bring benefits to the people. And Sanjeev, you talked about the cash grant. And I recall concerns being raised across the board, justifiably so, by citizens, parents whose children are in public school, in private schools. And only yesterday, the vice president made it clear that, look, this is a government that's listening. The People's Progressive Party Civic government is a government that's listening. The government took note of the concerns of parents whose children are in private schools, and the vice president made it clear that it's under active consideration. It's being examined whether those parents with children in private school should benefit from the $15,000, well, the $19,000, 15,000 cash grant and the $4,000 uniform voucher and supplies grant. The fact that the government has decided to examine the issue, it shows that the government is listening. And of course, as he made it clear, there has to be a lot of discussions, a lot of examination of the issue to see whether, how it will roll out. Because not every parent with a child in private school may very well be a case where that's a parent that is rich, that has money, but many of them may be making sacrifices. So the important point here is that you have a government that is listening. A government that, and this is a $3.2 billion program that's being rolled out. And I think it's over $200 million alone in Region 2. And as I speak here, I saw an email that came in from the Department of Public Information that says 466 Leg 1 students benefit from Because We Care Today. Could you imagine how much benefit this program is bringing to parents? Many of them, I'm reading stories, I'm sure you're reading a lot of stories on social media, comments by parents. So the program is a program that will benefit the people. The fact of the matter is, you have a government that is operating in a COVID-19 environment, when you have governments around the region, around the world, are barely making it to meet their current expenses, let alone implement programs of these nature, which bring significant benefits to people.
Well, the truth is that I've been seeing over the last 3 or 4 days, every day, large hundreds of people are benefiting every single day from the cash grants to the students. The consideration, the vice president was very clear. He says it's something the government has heard it. It is a strong case, and it is being addressed by the government. Now, I'm sure they have to make considerations about, do we actually have the funds? How do we do it? All of these various criteria. But it is important to note that it's just not being ignored, and it's just not being said, well, oh, this is what we're doing. We've heard, and and it's been considered by the government for what's going on, as opposed to the Moon Link or the Moon Blink program, the company. At the PAC last Monday, I was flabbergasted that a company would have to supply $19 million worth of equipment and has never supplied it. It seems the only thing that the last administration and the leader of the last administration achieved, the only thing he achieved during his term, is to paint things green. This is essentially all that has happened. State House has been painted green. The office of the president has been painted green with a big high fence that is green. Everything is painted green. But all of the fences are painted green and high, and all of the security equipment that is supposed to be supplied has evaporated. And of course, the investigation is ongoing, and the Auditor General is attempting to discover who were these people and to whom the money was paid. I am sure you will be hearing shortly about the details of the principles involved and the payment and how it come about. And when that does come out of the public meetings of the PAC, you will be astonished, Ed, as to exactly how that took place. But I mean, I am obliged to let it come out at the public hearings, as it would. But it is utterly ridiculous that when you are trying to give a student and the family of a student just a few dollars, $19,000, $20,000, and you hear this resistance and ruckus about it, and you hear all the negative talk about it, and 19 million, not 19,000, $19 million paid to a company to supply equipment to the office of the president, and doesn't do it, and they're not pursued, and nobody goes after them. Nobody goes to recover any of the money. Nobody pursues that thing. I mean, how could that be right? How could that be fair? How could that be even rational, that a government would sit by and allow that to happen? But it is what it is. That's where we're at.
And you know, Sanjeev, I think we're almost out of time. We have maybe another maybe 6 minutes or so to go. But you see, I want to say to the people, because people like Coretta McDonald and the others who are criticizing, could you imagine this is a lady who is representing teachers, many of whom are parents, who are benefiting from the cash grant? Is encouraging parents not to participate and well, teachers not to participate, and is claiming that it is a waste of money. You know, how could you consider putting monies into the hands of parents of children who are going to school? No, many of these parents, I saw stories of during the same distribution where parents are saying that they couldn't afford a computer for their children. They couldn't afford to maybe pay the internet for them to do homeschooling. Many of these parents are looking for this money, if school is to be reopened pretty soon, to maybe buy uniform for their children. Some of them may very well put in place, maybe put in washroom facilities in their homes, depending on how much money they get. So to say that it's a waste of monies shows the character of the opposition, shows the mentality of the PNC, that giving money, putting money in the hands of poor people is a waste of time. But putting money in the hands of their friends and their cronies, that elite group of people, like the one that got $19 million to supply surveillance cameras that never got to Guyana, and now he filed for bankruptcy apparently, and the company is set to be bankrupt. Giving the contract for supply of drugs, like I spoke about, $600 million, renting a drug bond for $12.5 million to store condoms and an old piece of machine. Those are not occasions where monies were being wasted. It wasn't a waste of state resources, but putting monies in the hands of poor people of this country is considered a waste of state resources by the very people who are telling you that they're the alternative government, that are telling you come 2025 that you should vote for them. You should give them a chance. How could you? And I think the people of this country would have seen, Sanjeev, for the 5 years that APNU were in office, that they did absolutely nothing because of this mentality that bringing benefits to poor people is a waste of money. But to throw parties, to go on all the joyrides all across, these people were spending $1 billion in dietary. Dietary meaning that they're buying food. The money that they're using to buy food annually was $1.3 billion, I think it was. These are the very people who discontinued that because we care cash grant in 2015, claiming that it was economically unfeasible. And at that time, it cost just about $1.6 billion. But they went in the same breath and spent close to $2 billion on the Durban Park. That is now taken away with ants.
Well, it unless you walk these streets, Ed, and unless you see people and you go into communities, you don't understand how little people make do with to make a living and to get by. And the parents of children in those communities that are struggling are like the parents anywhere. You want to give everything, you would give anything for your child. Now, a little bit of help, a lot of the parents that are struggling, this little bit of help goes a long way to giving a little bit of joy to the child, a little bit more. Any program and any activity that encourages or does that or enhances that, I would support. And I think any normal, rational Guyanese will also support it. The opposition have run out of things upon which they can criticize. They are now at a knee-jerk reaction. Everything that is done, they just have to criticize it. Everything that is being executed by the Irfan Ali-led government, every project that is coming to fruition, they just have to criticize it. They have no valid reasons. That doesn't stop them. It is irrelevant that there is no good criticism, that you are helping the people of a country that are really struggling. And it's difficult. It's difficult, and parents worry and ponder how are they going to look after their children. This gives them a little bit of a break, a little bit of an opportunity. We've all seen some of the publications in the newspapers and on television, Facebook, about it being happening. And you see another segment of the society, of the opposition, that is criticizing why you have to put pictures and why you have to do that on Facebook. Look, I will tell you my personal view, and I think the view of any rational person is this. One, you will always ask, what are your leaders doing? You always say that. When we're punishing, when we're struggling, what are they doing? They're showing you what they're doing, and they're showing you when they're doing it, so that the chronology, the occurrence of the events, there is a record of it. Secondly, I know that there is much to be said about the dignity and giving people, when you're giving help, you shouldn't have cameras. Listen to me. You should give help at every opportunity you can, cameras or no cameras. We live in the real world. We live in a practical world. A practical world requires that this be recorded so that people can actually see it is being done. You might have different views, but that's no reason to criticize a project and a program designed to assist people who desperately need help. So those sorts of things are not relevant to the issue. But if you don't want to look at the pictures, don't look. That's simple. The people who are receiving it are happy to receive it. And that's what we should do, you know. But I know we're about out of time. And so, Ed, I just wanted to remind people, beg, please get vaccinated, people. Get your second dose if you've had the first. If you haven't been vaccinated, and there is no reason why no medical reason why you should not, please get a shot. It will help you. It will save your life. It will help your family. Please do so. Good night, and may God be with you.
And Sanjeev, I want to join with you in expressing those very sentiments, because I recognize, we are not yet out of the pandemic, and I don't want people to believe that we're somehow out of the pandemic. And there are a lot of people who are still to be vaccinated. We want to encourage you. It's available. The first and second doses for every one of the vaccines, I think, are available. So there's no reason why you shouldn't take your vaccines, and you should continue to do what you are required to do with regards to the guidelines, where you wear your mask, you social distance, and you avoid crowds. Listen, taking your vaccine is going to protect you, it's going to protect your family, protect your children. Look, we have cases now where the Minister of Health recently mentioned the fact that you have children who are in ICU as a result of COVID. Do you want your children to get to that state? I guess not. So please, you have a responsibility to protect your children. Stop listening to the politicians, especially those on the opposition side who are telling you not to take it when they already took theirs. Don't do that. So Sanjeev, I want to join with you to express similar sentiments, that we encourage people to take your vaccines, get vaccinated. Both Sanjeev and I are vaccinated, and we are alive and well.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with us.
My family is too.
Exactly.
Everybody who can be vaccinated is vaccinated.
So again, I want to join with Sanjeev in expressing those sentiments, and I want to thank you for joining us on this Saturday evening. Sanjeev, it's a pleasure as usual to have you with me here on this program. So
always a pleasure, Ed, and good night to our viewers and listeners, and may your God be with you.
Good night.